Hello and welcome on into the PHFL NFL podcast, our week 11 review. Me, Adam, as always, joined by Kai and by Mikey. How are we, gentlemen?
All right. Can't quite believe it's week 11 already.
I know we've been doing this for a couple of months now. I was
Too long on
yeah.
some people's counts, probably.
Far too much Eagles chat, don't you think, Mikey?
Not
a
enough.
sentence is far too much Eagles chat.
Well, thankfully this week I've got the Eagles game, so we're only going to have a sentence, Mikey. So.
Mikey's comment during the week was, I used to not mind the Eagles until I realised Kai started supporting them.
I used to really like them. And see when they won the Super Bowl, I was in Australia at the time, and I was in a bar with loads of Patriots fans. And I remember when they won it, I was jumping up and down and celebrating. And now I just cannot stand them. I really can't. I think that's just.
It's because I like them.
It's that's never been hidden. That's obviously my competitive rivalry with Kai has led to that. So yeah.
So we've managed to talk about the Eagles without it even being the Eagles game yet. So that's impressive.
See what he does.
Mikey secretly likes them.
I don't think so. Looking at his face just now, I don't think it does. But moving on to a game which has some players that I think Mikey does like. Is that a link? I don't know. Is that it doesn't matter. Anyway, Thursday Night Football was the Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks won 28 points to 21. And my main point from this game is I think Carlos Dunlap has maybe improved that defensive line a little bit for Seattle. There was actually some pressures coming from that defensive line from Seattle, and I feel their defense actually has improved a little bit since the start of the season, giving Russell Wilson some help. And I thought it was a fairly good performance from Seattle to get that win over the Cardinals. Some people might have thought the Seahawks would win that game, and others might have thought the Cardinals. But Mikey, what did you think about that game? Did you get anything to say?
I always feel that when we do the podcast on a Thursday, that the previous week's Thursday Night Football feels like it was forever ago.
Oh, it was ages ago.
Yeah. I stayed up to watch it, and I actually ended up being almost 2 hours late for work the next day. So let's hope nobody that I work with listens to the podcast, because I just told them I slept through my alarms. Good game. It was. I don't think there was anything vintage about it from either side. First touchdown play from the Seahawks was very fast, very efficient. Nothing really jumped out at me in this game. I know what you said about obviously the defensive side of the ball from the Seahawks, but I thought that the Seahawks D kept the wide receiver core of Arizona quite quiet. Highest receiving yards was Larry Fitzgerald with 62. Just not much really going on. They just couldn't seem to click. I thought that they were going to do the double over the Seahawks this season, but Seahawks needed that win, I'd say, more than the Cardinals, and you could tell from the start of the game they seemed very up for it.
Yeah.
Like you've kind of almost touched on, I think it was a case of it wasn't really a case of the Cardinals doing anything wrong. I think the Seahawks were just better. I don't think you could come out of that game as a Cardinals fan or as a Cardinals player and go, oh, I could have done that better, I could have done that. Obviously, you could have won the game, but it's easier said than done. I just think the Seahawks probably knew that they needed it for momentum, obviously to stop their slide and to stop the Cardinals' momentum, because they were starting to pull ahead a wee bit and looked like Mikey said, they were gonna do the double. But I think one of the biggest things was obviously having a better running back for the Seahawks. Definitely. I think having Carlos Hyde back made a massive difference because it gave Russell Wilson something to change, and it obviously gave the Cardinals defense something to think about.
Yeah.
No interception this week for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I noticed that.
My Russell Wilson interception watch has dropped off. Two fumbles, but
but no interceptions. That's the important thing there. The rushing game, I think, was a big difference, as you said. Kai, those 165 rushing yards for Seattle this week, averaging over 5 a carry for Carlos Hyde, and he got a touchdown as well. I think when Chris Carson comes back, that's only going to help that running back room.
They've also activated Rashad Penny off the physically unable to play list.
Perform, is it not?
Perform, play, whatever it's called.
I always felt that physically unable to perform sounds a bit strange.
You don't.
Also, the most newsworthy thing that came out of this for me, I was totally. They started talking about Lemon Field, And I was like, I don't know an NFL stadium called Lumen Field. I was like, this is getting played at CenturyLink Stadium. And it turns out that obviously the naming rights for the Seahawks Stadium has changed. I've never heard.
Oh.
They only just started talking about it on Thursday night. So yeah, it's Lumen Field now rather than
I didn't know that.
CenturyLink.
That's
Bizarre.
I need to call it CenturyLink because Lumen Field sounds dreadful.
That's what sponsorships do to stadiums.
I know. If you're in Scotland, everyone I'm sure knows the Tony Macaroni Arena. So
I mean, I was going to point out the Hope CBD Arena, which is Hamilton's ground.
yeah, there's a lot of strange naming rights for stadiums.
The Spaghetti Had, as someone called it on it.
Moving over to another game where the stadium is sponsored. FedEx, I believe, sponsor this stadium. That's a poor line. I know you're looking at
that whole stadium's not sponsored.
Oh no, some of them aren't. Like Lambeau's not sponsored. No, Lambeau's, but yes, the FedEx Field, where the Washington football team, who just going away for this game. There's rumours that they're just going to keep that name.
Oh no!
They said that it's a strong contender to go forward with, because apparently there's no other football teams in the National Football League, so they're allowed to be called the Washington Football Team. Never understood that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, especially with the way, obviously, in Britain we don't really have like team nicknames like this, but in America all the teams have got some sort of nickname. So you'd have thought they'd have something. You'd
like to think that like big billion-dollar like companies or sports franchises have a good marketing team at least. So you've got all these people who are probably on six-figure salaries sitting in a big marketing meeting room thinking, right, what can we call this football team that's from Washington? And all they've came up with is the Washington Football Team. Okay. I can't wrap my head around it. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I'd have suggested with the government being based in Washington, you could come up with some sort of senators or something like that. You know.
Oh yeah, they've got the Washington Capitals. That's the ice hockey team.
Yeah.
Obviously, because the DC is the capital of America, even though it's not a state. So, yeah, you'd like to think that with a place so rich in history like Washington, they'd be able to come up with at least one name that's not the football team.
I mean,
but
the Washington Georges. Could that the
Washington Georges?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, just change
the Washington Presidents, something like that. See, this is just off the top of our heads. We're not even in marketing, and you've got these marketing so-called experts that have called it the football team.
Yeah,
let's just move on from that.
I think the fact that we've talked so long about that maybe tells you how much I have written about this game, because the major talking point in the game I'll come on to in a minute, but from the actual game itself, there was a very strange play. Mikey's crying, but don't worry, I'm not going to talk about it yet. We'll get to it. But the very strange play in the game, which the three of us were talking about it while it happened, we weren't even sure what was going on, was Joe Burrows running towards the end zone, fumbles the ball. The Washington defense appeared to collect the ball, take it back out the end zone, fumble it, go back in the end zone. They do a touchback, which actually resulted in a safety, and then it turns out it wasn't that because he'd never taken possession of the ball, the defender.
The referee had to take a good few breaths while trying to explain it.
Yeah.
Usually, like the referee, it's maybe like 3 lines, and that's him. He's said the call. Like it was about 10 minutes late, and he was still going on about what had happened, and then he changed it.
Yeah, it was like he'd been reading War and Peace and trying to recite it in the middle of the pitch.
I think we need to do a new segment melted. The Washington fumble of the week, because after that one that it travelled 25 yards against the Giants, I think there's going to be one this week as well. So
yeah, but Mikey, you were crying slightly. Joe Burrows appears to be ACL and MCL that's been torn.
See, when you read the sentence reconstructive surgery, that's just when you know. Exactly. I mean, I know me, Kai, over the course of the podcast, I've had a war of words when it comes to Burrow and Justin Herbert, but that doesn't mean that Kai doesn't love Joe Burrow, because I know he does, and I love Justin Herbert as well. And it doesn't matter who it is in the NFL, if you see someone go down like that, it's just horrible to watch. And even if Burrow didn't win Rookie of the Year, him and Justin Herbert were putting up numbers for rookies that have never been seen before in the NFL, and they were battling it out, and it was one of the biggest narratives this year in the NFL. It was just amazing to watch. Probably say it was expected of Joe Burrow. Probably, I know he was still the 6th round pick, probably a 6th overall pick, but probably a little bit less expected for Herbert to come in and play as well as he has. So just not nice to see that happen. They've obviously lost a franchise player, but probably the best thing to come out of it is that with their quarterback struggles now on an already struggling team, could they get a maybe top 5 pick and maybe bring in an offensive lineman to protect Joe Burrow, to protect him for the next 5, 6, 7 years? So hopefully he'll be back for the start of next season and better than ever.
Well, there is a worry that he's not. There's talks that he might not be back in time for the start of the season, depending on how long the recovery is going to take. So that shows you quite how bad an injury it was, because I couldn't actually watch it when they started showing the replay.
They showed the first replay, and then they went away, and it was quite a while after. It was maybe even like an hour later. They then got a second replay, and they did their classic like red zone thing of, right, we're going to show you this once. If you don't want to see it, look away. And the way his leg moves, it's I think we were saying this, Mikey. I don't know how it doesn't snap.
We were all saying
like
at the
folds
time,
in half.
I think we would have rather it had snapped, because a leg break is like a Dak Prescott injury. That could be back in 6 months' time, still past the end of the season. But when it's an actual bone break, it's easier to heal. That just was horrific to watch.
Yeah, it was really bad. That Bengals QB room, obviously Ryan Finley came in to finish that game for the Bengals, which they did. They end up losing 20 points to 9. But they have brought Brandon Allen in. I think he was on the practice squad. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Brandon Allen has been announced as the starter, not Ryan Finley.
It's been rumoured, yeah. But either way, you've not got a backup quarterback.
Yeah, because obviously Brandon Allen most recently played a few games last season for the Broncos, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I think in general the Bengals are pretty banged up for this week. Obviously Joe Mixon's on IR. They're going to have Brandon Allen's suspected to be playing quarterback. I don't know if you saw, but Giovanni Bernard sat out of yesterday's practice with concussion
Get
protocol.
your Simon JP rhymes ready.
So his status for the game
Really
on Sunday is still up in the air.
Anybody playing Kai in fantasy is he has Joe Mixon. He then brought in Giovanni Bernard. So what's next for you?
Drop Giovanni Bernard, pick up Samaji Pirine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think Frank Gore's still available.
Penny, as we talked about.
Aye.
But that maybe means for this coming week, the Giants, you say, might be favourites against the Bengals?
I think they would have been favourites anyway, but I think they're quite heavy favourites now.
Yeah.
One thing I like to see from this game was AJ Green scored a touchdown. I think at the start of the season we all expected him or wanted him maybe. I don't know what fantasy owners in the past know how good a wide receiver he was, but I think people now understand that they were maybe expecting him to be the wide receiver one in that team, and now he's not. But I think we spoke about it on previous podcasts. I think he's really grown into his role as kind of that veteran in the wide receiver room who's helping the young guys. I think he knows his role as kind of the wide receiver 3 in this team. And I would have liked to have thought that if Burrow had stayed healthy, then AJ Green maybe would have seen an upshare in targets and receptions and maybe end zone targets because he scored his touchdown this week. But again, now that's all back up in the air because you never know what's going to happen with these new quarterbacks in Cincinnati.
Yep, totally agree with you. Just quickly before we move on to the next game, Randy Bullock, who I think is probably my favourite name for a kicker, missed his first one, his first field goal. I think he's missed quite a few this season now.
I think he's probably
two extra points this week.
Yeah,
he may well be your favourite Adam, but I think he's potentially the worst.
Very possibly, yeah.
I mean, it's bad when was it week 1 when he I can't remember whether it was week 1. I think it was when he missed the extra point or the field goal, and automatically pulled up holding the opposite leg from the one he used to kick the ball.
Yes, that was very humorous.
Mate, at least get it right if you're going to pretend you're injured.
All I'll say before we get to him later is he's no hot rod.
No, certainly not. I tell you what, he's also no Will Lutz. And Mikey, the next game was Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints, and you were having a look at that for us. An NFC South matchup where most of the points in that first half were scored by the kickers until Kamara got his touchdown run just at the end of the second quarter. What do you have to say about that game, where obviously the main talking point was Taysom Hill was starting at quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I bet the over in this game. I thought this was going to be... I know Drew Brees wasn't playing, but I thought this was going to be Matt Ryan kind of, those vintage Matt Ryan losses that he has, where he puts up 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and maybe a couple of interceptions. But he was quiet, threw for 0 touchdowns and threw 2 picks as well. Obviously, the main talking point was Taysom Hill. I read before the game that apparently a lot of the Saints organisation, players, coaching staff didn't want him to start. They wanted Jameis Winston to start. Not sure what the reason behind that is. That remains to be seen.
It might be because Taysom Hill had only thrown 18 passes beforehand.
I know, but you see from Sean Payton, he's so trusted. I've said this before. I think Sean Payton is the most creative mind in the NFL. I just think the things that he does. I think we spoke about it on Sunday in our group chat. The amount of wildcat plays they play with Alvin Kamara, like taking the snap at quarterback, and Taysom Hill or even Drew Brees in previous weeks out wide. Some of the stuff they play is just really, really cool football. Taysom Hill, 18 for 23, 233 yards. But obviously the main stat points that he had were 10 rush attempts for 51 yards, which led the team, more rushing yards than Alvin Kamara, and obviously 2 rush touchdowns as well. So it was an all-round, I've got my notes, it was an all-round food performance. I don't know if that's because we're getting to Thanksgiving. All-round good performance after a slow start for the Saints. But the biggest question I think comes out of this is, we said that if Jameis Winston was going to start while Drew Brees was in IR, this was a trial period for him for maybe what Teddy Bridgewater had last season. Yeah. That doesn't seem to be happening. So I think the main question I've got to ask you two is Taysom Hill in a trial for a future starting job in the NFL, or is he even seen as a trial for Drew Brees' replacement?
No, and here is why. I think players like Taysom Hill are found out quite easily. In the past, you had players like Tim Tebow, and obviously now you've got Lamar Jackson, who, when they first come through, they appear to be the best thing since sliced bread, with the kind of dual threat, great on the ground and stuff, but eventually teams work them out, and you've seen that, I think, with Lamar Jackson this year. He's not been as good as he was. So I think Taysom Hill here will be great for a couple of games, maybe half a season if he started next year, but then eventually they'll work him out, and you'll have to really improve as a passer. Don't get me wrong, I thought he passed quite well today, for this game, but over half the targets were at Michael Thomas, so he's fairly reliant on him, And so, in my opinion, I don't think he's a starter. Even though this might be seen as a trial, I don't think he'll get the starter job. I don't know about Kai's thoughts.
I think, like you say, like a lot of quarterbacks have got to be very, very good. A lot of the very good quarterbacks are very good at one thing or the other, and the very best are good at both. I think he's very good at rushing, and he's a threat on the ground, and maybe his passing game isn't quite as strong, but like you say, someone will probably find him out eventually. And I think if you take away his rushing threat, he's not strong enough as a standalone quarterback. But if he doesn't stay at the Saints, if he goes elsewhere, then I think he's a very good backup to have, or a very good player to have in your roster, because he can literally do everything. He can.
I was going to lead to the fact that obviously Taysom Hill, I don't know the guy, obviously, but you've got to guess that any NFL quarterback, starting or not, is going to want to be a starting quarterback in the future. And he's obviously going to have that mentality. But if he realises, kind of what we spoke about with AJ Green, if he realises his role with the Saints, the weapon that he is for a team, even if you're not a starting player, is massive. Like, you can tell that Sean Payton absolutely loves the guy. You put him in so many different positions. I think you can play him on offense, at least quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and tight end. I mean, that's not dual threat, that's quad threat. And yes, he might not be a starting quarterback, but if he knows his role, whether it's Drew Brees starting next season for the Saints or someone else, I think Taysom Hill is going to be a massive weapon for them in any Super Bowl run that they have in the future.
Just obviously looking at the stat line and from this week, do you think if Taysom Hill continues to start, it has an adverse effect on Alvin Kamara?
Yes, in my opinion, Kai, I think teams, when it's Drew Brees, realise Drew Brees isn't going to run, so they put less players in the box because they're covering the pass, whereas here I think they're more happy to put one-on-ones with wide receivers, and they'll stack the box with 7 or 8 players. So even if it's Kamara running instead of Hill, there's more folk there
to stop him. Yeah, I'm just because you kind of think if they line up with the two of them, if they line up with Kamara in the backfield and they run a play action or something like that, and then Taysom Hill breaks out, then Alvin Kamara's not getting the ball as much, but then if Alvin Kamara's locked up and they're kind of stopping him rushing, then Taysom Hill again has the ability to break out and rush. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see who starts over the next few weeks if they stick with Taysom Hill, or whether they give Jameis Winston a chance at some point. But I think for as long as Taysom Hill starts, I think Alvin Kamara might struggle a wee bit.
Yeah.
I say struggle. It's
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara, but
Yeah, just on the other side of the ball, obviously we said that Matt Ryan didn't have a great game, Mikey, but Julio Jones obviously only had 2 targets, one early on in the game, and then went off with an injury, came back on, even though he had a tight hamstring, came back on, caught a pass, and then went, "That's me, back off again, thanks, cheers."
right, see you later.
I think that's the stage Julio, I was about to call him, the stage Julio Jones is at in his career. Obviously, in my opinion, obviously we didn't get to see players like Jerry Rice and prime Randy Moss because of our age and generations. But to me, Julio Jones is the best wide receiver ever. Like, that's just because we are almost similar to, and yes, I'll tie in the sad news about Maradona passing away. We didn't get to see him fully, so we say that maybe Messi or Ronaldo is the best soccer player ever because we didn't get to see the Pelés and the Maradonas. I think that's the situation with Julio Jones, and he's at that stage now where, kind of similar to Tom Brady when he went to Tampa, like, yes, you're going to get to dictate some of the moves that your franchise makes because you're at that level. And I think Julio wanted to come back in that game, so Julio went back in that game. I don't know if the trainers wanted him to come back at all because now he might be questionable for this week. So, but he's at that stage in his career where he basically does what he wants because he's earned that right, and he is one of the top 5 wide receivers to ever play the game.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. So the Atlanta Falcons have quite a stacked wide receiver room, I'd say, with Jones and Ridley. And the next game, Kai's getting excited already because he knows my link here. The next game involved a team that also had a stacked wide receiver room, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were at the Jacksonville Jaguars. They won 27-3. Mikey, you looked at this game as well. I'll be honest, I didn't see a lot to talk about in this game because it was basically happened as we expected.
I've just got 2 kind of rookie stats again. I've spoke about James Robinson in the past. It was a routine win for the Steelers. The Steelers only had 106 rushing yards total, which is quite surprising when you're up against the Jags. Whereas James Robinson went for 73 yards rushing and 21 yards receiving. I think he's about to projected to shatter the undrafted running back record for scrimmage yards in a season. Can't remember who held the record before, but on the other side of the ball, Chase Claypool, first wide receiver in the Super Bowl era with at least 10 touchdowns over his first 10 career games. Yeah. The guy's putting up insane numbers for the Steelers. And as you said, obviously your lead into this game, all 3 wide receivers in this Steelers team are fantasy relevant. You would never. It's kind of hard to. I know you've got Deontay Johnson and ESPN, and I myself's got Claypool, and you do wonder when you're kind of setting your lineups who's going to take shares away from who in this game. Obviously, you're looking at the secondaries of other teams and what's going to be happening there. But the fact that they are just oozing confidence just now just shows that they're going to throw the ball to anyone and everyone. Eric Ebron got a touchdown as well. I seen a stat the other day, I couldn't find it earlier, and it showed you kind of Steelers' schedule this year, that they're playing the whole NFC Eagles division. Can't remember what the
East.
I think they play the whole NFC East. They've obviously played the Jags. I think they've only played 2 teams over 500 this season or something like that. So
that's why I made the point earlier in the season, Mikey. I was like, I know that they were 8-0, 9-0 at that point, and whatever. But I was like, they've only beaten a couple of really good teams.
Yeah. But the thing I like is the Steelers don't care about the 16-0 record. I know it'll be playing on their minds and they would love to get it because only 2 teams in history. Actually, 1 team's only ever done it in the modern era. But you would love. They just want a Super Bowl. That's all they want. If they lose the rest of their games in and finish 10-6 and still win the Super Bowl, they will not care. All they want right now is a Super Bowl. Big Ben's getting old. Maybe only has a couple of years left in him. Yeah, it's a huge window of opportunity for the Steelers this year. But one thing I seen that I just absolutely loved, and this just shows what the quarterback merry-go-round is in the NFL.
I think I was about to say the same thing, Mikey, so on you go.
Yeah, so Jake Luton is going to be benched this weekend for the Jags for Mike Glennon. Mike Glennon get benched in 2017 for Mitch Trubisky at the Bears. Mitch Trubisky get benched for Nick Foles. Nick Foles get benched for Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew get benched for Jake Luton, and Jake Luton has now been benched for Mike Glennon.
It's
So
unbelievable.
it's gone full circle for Mike Glennon. I think he was at the Raiders last year, and then obviously joined the Jags this season. It's just you're fighting a losing battle with no offence to Mike Glennon or Luton or Minshew. Obviously, Luton's a young rookie who's going to make mistakes, and Gardner Minshew, you two obviously have your feelings for him. So a tough quarterback decision to have for the Jags just now, but the more they lose, the closer they get to Trevor Lawrence. So who knows what's going to happen?
I have a question, and as I ask this question, I think I've already answered it with another player. But Jake Luton's stat line here includes a passer rating at 15.5 and 4 interceptions. And I was thinking, has there ever been a quarterback performance so bad? And I've already answered it beforehand.
Carson Wentz every week.
Well, Nathan Peterman for the Buffalo Bills. I'm sure he threw 5 interceptions in the first half.
It was his debut.
Yeah.
That was horrific.
Yeah, I think I answered my own question there. But yeah, Luton definitely struggled.
That was an NFL debut to end all NFL debuts.
Yeah.
What a poor guy.
Yeah.
Just like quickly before we move on, what on earth do the Jacksonville Jaguars do? If James Robinson gets injured, because nobody else rushed the ball this week.
Do you think Dari Agumbawale might get some touches? I know he's mainly a receiving back, but
I think he would need to. But I think they've kept
more so than they have.
Aye, that's what I was going to say. It's not as if they're flying high with him just now, so he's kind of the diamond in the mud, you would say.
Do you think that they would be better if they just didn't play a quarterback and just snap the ball to James Robinson every time?
Just keep giving him the ball. Let him do things.
You might as well try anything in Jacksonville just now. The question I was going to ask you is, I have a comparison to James Robinson, but in terms of other NFL running backs in the league, who do you compare him most to?
That's a good question.
Pop me out with that one.
Yeah, it's hard because when I look at his stature, I look at him and think he reminds me a bit of a Christian McCaffrey, but I know he catches a few passes, but he's certainly not as dual threat as Christian McCaffrey. But just physically, I look at him and I think he looks that kind of shape.
Yeah, I don't know. He's quite small, but he's quite stocky. I don't know. I don't know who. I don't think I could compare him to anyone.
Is Frank
really.
Gore the wrong answer?
See, no, yes, Frank Gore is never the right answer. I don't compare him in stature or size, but in the way that he plays, he's such a downhill running back. I compare him to Derrick Henry. I think that the guy is an absolute monster. Obviously, Henry is a physical specimen, but in the way that James Robinson plays, in the way that he hits through tackles, But that was what was leading me to my next point. James Robinson, if you're an NFL team who's losing games, you're not going to be rushing the ball a lot in the later stages of the game. It's a scary thought if you put him on a team. See, even if you put him on the Pittsburgh Steelers, the amount of the amount of carries that he would get, it's a scary sight. It's a shame to see players on such losing teams like James Robinson and the Jags or Frank Gore on the Jets, but it's just one of those things where you think if he was on a winning team, this guy would be even more of a monster than he is just now.
Yeah, that's very true. I think I'd agree there. Moving on to a team who... I was going to say moving on to a team who are winning, but they're not. Both of these teams have got losing records. The Houston Texans were at home to the New England Patriots. The Texans won 27 points to 20. Talking about teams that like to rush the ball, New England. They've got Sony Michel coming back off of the IR. They had Damian Harris doing some running. James White had some carries as well as some catches. But the big news for them in this game, in terms of injury, was Rex Burkhead, who went down like a kind of flat like a pancake when I was watching the highlights. He just down and did not move. Yeah, it was. He had only 4 attempts before he went down. But I mainly want to touch on the other side of the ball, where I think Houston are, though they don't have a great record, I've always thought that Houston were actually an all right team. Their record's 3-7, but I think they're a better team than that record suggests. And I think they're kind of coming into their own a wee bit more now. I know they don't have David Johnson in the running back room. They only rushed for 55 total yards, and 36 of those were Deshaun Watson. And the main point I brought from this game was that Deshaun Watson rushing touchdown when he lowered the shoulder on that Patriots defender and
melted someone,
trucked him right into that end zone. That was amazing.
That was prime Cam Newton. That was prime Cam Newton against Cam Newton's team. Like that, the way that Cam Newton kind of moved in his MVP season is what Deshaun Watson did in that play.
Yeah, that was amazing. But 27-20, Cam tried a Hail Mary right at the end, which is actually, I think it was caught. I'm not quite sure if it was classed as a catch, but definitely Izzo.
It was caught, yeah.
Yeah, caught the ball, but it was about 10 yards short of the end zone. But yeah, in the end, it was closer than I think it should have been, if that makes sense. I thought the Houston Texans were fairly comfortable. Maybe the scoreline didn't suggest it, but I always fancied the Texans to be winning that game, and they did. That's all I have to talk about in that game. Does anyone else want to say anything before I move on to the next one?
I actually thought it was a very entertaining game.
Yeah, it was, but I didn't feel there was huge points.
I was going to say, I was just going to curse on Deshaun Watson because I was playing against him this week in fantasy. Not that it made any difference, but he was already...
half-time points did he have?
24.
Oh.
Yeah,
24 points at half-time, yeah. So at that point, I'm pretty sure I messaged you both saying my matchup was over. And
that was like 6 minutes past 7. Like, and 6 minutes after.
I didn't recover from that. Straight up, I knew I was done. Mainly because everyone but one of my players was playing at that time, and I was already projected to only get about 100 points. So that's how my
I think what you said about the Texans is true. I think they're an excellent team, and they've got really, really good individual players. I just think that Bill O'Brien dug them into a hole over the past couple of years that they've kind of struggled and they will continue to struggle to get out of. You wonder again, if Hopkins was still in this team, they wouldn't have a losing record.
Well, yeah,
I was just going to say that. I don't think they've recovered from losing him.
A regular weekly check-up on who won that trade?
I mean, I'm starting to maybe change my decision.
I'm still going to go with the Cardinals at this stage.
Yeah. But yeah, just the fact that it's the Texans. It wasn't just Hopkins. Bill O'Brien has just made some very, very, because he was head coach, but he was also
became the GM,
the manager, or
GM,
like
yeah,
the GM, yeah, general manager, and he's dug them into a hole. I don't know if he was maybe just support someone else and just spent a couple of years destroying the Texans so that the team that he supports could maybe try and get close to a Super Bowl. But hopefully that they'll. I don't know. Crennel probably won't stay on next season, but hopefully they can find a good head coach, maybe a college coach like Urban Meyer or something like that. But
that would be exciting. That would be exciting.
Yeah, they have all the pieces there to challenge. They've been a playoff team for the last couple of years. They had the beating of the Chiefs at Arrowhead before that massive comeback. So the pieces are there, and obviously they're going to have a high draft pick this year, so they might be one.
Oh no, they're not, because remember they've traded that pick away to Miami.
Oh, the Dolphins. Nah, they'll be on 16 next year.
The one thing I would say before we obviously move on to another game is I cannot help but look at Romeo Crennel and compare him to see the office lady in Monsters Inc.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I just constantly think he looks like her.
He doesn't look like a Romeo.
Seriously,
to me, he doesn't look like a Romeo.
No, if you looked at him and were to pick a name, I don't think Romeo would come to mind.
I'm picturing an Abercrombie and Fitch model.
Aye.
Yeah. Well,
no offense to Romeo, because
I bet he's a specimen.
We move on. We move on from a game where we were fairly impressed with Deshaun Watson's quarterback play to a game where I don't think we were impressed with a huge amount of the quarterback play. That was the Philadelphia Eagles at the Cleveland Browns, and everyone will be glad to hear it was me watching this game and not Kai, so you don't get Kai's Eagles chat for 4.5 hours like normal this week.
It's almost as if we rigged the draw of the games.
Almost as if we did.
I'm in half, not because I don't get to talk about them, just because they're rubbish.
So here are my points, and then I will let Kai talk for about 10 seconds, but here are my points on the game, okay? Cleveland won the game 22 points to 17. The weather for a third game in the row at Cleveland was absolutely shocking. There were no offensive points in the first half at all, which is horrendous. The only points were a pick six from Carson Wentz right at the start of the game. I think it was, if not his first, it was very close to his first pass. And he also had an interception right at the end of the game, Wentz, when they were up near the goal line trying to come back in the game. The struggles for the Eagles continued because Miles Sanders had a fumble basically on the goal line early on in the game. Carson Wentz was tackled in the end zone, his own end zone, and had a safety. The Eagles weren't great, but for Cleveland, yet again, Mayfield passed less than 26 times, and that means that Cleveland win the game because you had Chubb running for 114 yards on 20 attempts. Kareem Hunt was surprisingly inefficient. He had less yards than the other attempts, 11 yards from 13 attempts, but Chubb had a huge 50-yard run where it looked like he was going to get tackled and just brushed the guy off and broke right through the line. And then I think the main rush we want to talk about was Kareem Hunt's leap like a salmon over those defenders.
He was walking on air.
It was.
You shouldn't be able to jump that high and stay in the air for so long.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But the passing game obviously was fairly non-existent for Cleveland, as it is, as I think they want it to be.
Just to go back to that stat you said, Adam, the Baker Mayfield one, is he undefeated when thrown under 20 odd times?
I think they've only lost once when he passes less than 26 times.
That's incredible.
I'll need to get the exact thing, but it's either 0 losses or 1 loss. Basically, if he hardly passes, they win the game. But who he was passing to before this game? Had any of you heard of this wide receiver Hodge for the Browns?
No idea who he was.
No, I had no idea either, but he was the leading receiver.
Is that... No, never heard of him.
No, exactly. That maybe tells you what was going on there. But Kai, you have exactly 14 seconds to discuss the Eagles.
They're absolutely dreadful. Let's move on.
Yeah.
The two things I would say that have become glaringly obvious from this season is mainly around the draft. It's become very clear that someone, I can't remember who, someone decided that drafting Jalen Reagor before Justin Jefferson was a good idea. Because we passed off Justin Jefferson to take Jalen Reagor. Not saying Jalen Reagor's bad, but come on, like Justin Jefferson's been up there as Rookie of the Year this year, and it has become very apparent that we just drafted Jalen Hurts without really having any sort of idea what to do with him. Nobody had a plan on him sitting behind Carson Wentz for a period of time and then becoming the starter. It's kind of become a bit chaotic. Kind of feel sorry for the guy. I don't know what Carson Wentz has got to do to get dropped.
Well, that's the point I was going to bring up, Kai, because Doug Peterson's had an interview. I don't know if you've seen the transcript for it.
He faltered. Yeah. He faltered when he was asked.
He said, now correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I read, that he was asked, are you thinking of changing the quarterback? And he says, no, not at this point, not today, no, we're not thinking about that. And you go, what about for Monday night? And there's a kind of like and it's just, so is Carson, and then he was asked, so is Carson your QB for Monday? And he's like, yes. But there was that kind of sort of thing in the middle.
So he was after his initial hesitation. Sorry, I've just found the exact thing. He said, I think about a lot of things. The question was, is Carson my starter? He is my starter. End of story. You guys can blow it up however you want. Carson Wentz has come out and said he's preparing the same way. If he was asked directly if he understand that he's starting on Monday night, and he said yes. So,
right, so I've just got one question for you. Kai, would you play Carson Wentz?
In a game against someone like the Seahawks, I would feel very sorry for Jalen Hurts if he chucked him in there.
So yes, you start with
that's what I was just going to ask.
A baptism of fire, right?
You imagine Doug Peterson comes out and says, yeah, Hurts is our guy for the rest of the season. Seattle, at Green Bay, the New Orleans Saints, at the Cardinals, and then at the Dallas Cowboys, and then another division game against Washington. You can't throw the guy into that.
No,
that's ridiculous.
I think you've got to play Wentz.
I'm not. That's what I mean is when I say there is no plan on how we get him in.
Yeah, in our QB rankings, I ranked Wentz quite highly. I don't know what's going on. I think he's better than how he's playing. I don't know what's happening with him at the moment, but I think
I would give him some sort of dues in the sense that that offensive line has changed every week, and not just through injuries. Injuries have played a part, but for some reason, we keep changing it up. We can't seem to work out who we want to play at right guard. We keep switching it up, and then to make matters worse, throughout all this, the the one player that's never faltered is Jason Kelsey, and he went out injured for a period on Sunday night, and I think that's when I really worried, because if you ever don't want to lose someone, it's him.
I think even if you make the playoffs, you know that this season's kind of been injury plagued and a bit of a bust. So I wouldn't judge Carson Wentz on this season alone. You've seen the kind of stuff he can do in the past, and hopefully for Eagles fans that he can bring up that form in the past, because he was in before that injury, the year they won the Super Bowl, he was the MVP. There was no denying that. Before that injury, if he'd stayed healthy, he would have been the MVP. I'm not pushing the boat on Carson Wentz just yet, as much as I like Jalen Hurts from college. But hopefully, whatever happens this season, let the Eagles rest up, and who knows what will happen next season with Carson Wentz, because I still see him as an elite level quarterback. He's just making some silly mistakes because they're under a lot of pressure this season. But to go on to what Kai said about the Jalen Reagor, I seen a video on Good Morning Football of the Minnesota Vikings had the pick after the Eagles, and after the Eagles took Jalen Reagor, there was a video of Mike Zimmer and all the Vikings staff and coaches and scouts going crazy because they knew that Justin Jefferson was still on the board. And before they even announced that the Vikings were on the clock, they were like, punch it in. Excuse me, they were like, punch it in. Justin Jefferson, we're taking him. Like, there's no doubt about that. And you just think if Carson Wentz had a weapon like Justin Jefferson, this season could be a whole lot different for them.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, the thing about Carson Wentz that I would say, obviously, I'm not pushing him out, right? And you know what he's capable of, but at the same time, as a franchise that in such recent history has done so well, it seems like ever since then, from 2017 onwards, they've not really been that exciting the past couple of years. They're not, that way you could understand it if we were at least playing good football and losing games because teams were playing better, but we're not playing well. It's not even good to watch. Like, even the games we're winning, we're scraping through to win them, and we're doing it against teams that have bad records.
Yeah, well, I think we talk like this about the Eagles most weeks, and I'm sure after this coming week, when they've played against the Seahawks, you'll get to moan about them again, Kai.
Yeah.
So
I mean, at least if they get beat this week, then it's justifiable because it's against someone that's actually good.
We can move from a team who has been struggling with injuries in the Philadelphia Eagles to teams who also had some injury problems. Carolina Panthers at home to the Detroit Lions. Kai, you were looking at this game. I'm hoping this is a fairly quick one. Carolina won 20 points to a big fat 0 for Detroit. Matt Stafford's first of his career.
This was probably the worst game I've had to look at. And I looked at the Texans-Browns game last week, so that's saying something. Yeah, only the second shutout of the season so far. Lions were very, very, very poor. I think they missed DeAndre Swift. They only had 40 total rushing yards. Obviously, you know the capabilities of Adrian Peterson, but he's getting on a wee bit, so he's not quite as capable of going the distance and being the lead back for a period of time. And obviously they were behind. They were behind for most of the game. Sorry. So he wasn't seeing much action. The offensive line for the Detroit Lions, I wouldn't put this down to the Panthers pass rush or whatever, because I don't think it's anything magically special. But the offensive line gave up 5 sacks on Stafford. You're never going to win a game if you're letting that happen.
No.
I'll come on to PJ Walker at the end of this. I'll let Mikey talk about him because I know he likes him. Panthers, I would say, got off lightly because I don't think they played very well. They just happened to be playing a team that was even worse. They didn't look as if they had any. Again, I think I said this last week. Without Christian McCaffrey, the Panthers have no punch. They can't, if they're struggling passing the ball. I'm not saying they did this week, but if they're maybe being kind of found out through the air, they don't seem to have the punch on the ground and Mike Davis the same way they do with Christian McCaffrey. So the quicker he's back for the Panthers, the better. I think Teddy Bridgewater's back this week. So that we'll see we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, the big talking point in the story of the day for this one was PJ Walker, who you can't really fault him, to be honest. He got the win, did what he had to do, and then I'll let Mikey talk about him.
Yeah, 30 seconds on PJ Walker, Mikey. On you go.
Oh, right, okay. Just everything about him. I love the guy. I know he threw a few interceptions. That was always going to happen in a first start. Maybe a bit of nerves, some silly mistakes, but was waived 12 times from NFL teams in the past. He was on the Colts practice squad, and then Andrew Luck really liked PJ Walker and endorsed him to start in the XFL to his dad. Andrew Luck's dad was the commissioner of the XFL. They're now defunct, but hopefully going to come back XFL. Played for the Houston Roughnecks, and I think he threw 15 touchdowns in 3 games or something like that. He was probably going to become the MVP if COVID-19 hadn't destroyed the season. So really glad to see him. He was the first ever player drafted from the XFL in both XFL times. Obviously, there was one in the early 2000s. So has come in, has bided his time, has took his opportunities, and yes, Teddy Bridgewater might be back next week, but regardless of what happens, delighted to see PJ Walker play this week. I was ecstatic for him.
Yeah, I thought he played quite well. I was impressed with him in the XFL, and yeah, I'm glad that he played well in the NFL. Just quickly on the XFL, I believe that The Rock has now bought the XFL, hasn't he?
He has, yes.
Yeah. So that could be interesting.
Because he put up a video of him announcing it, and he had all the different XFL helmets behind him. Hopefully, because the XFL when it first started in 2000 was ridiculous. It was awful, and they totally repackaged it and revamped it for last year, and it was really starting to take off. It was some clever rules that they had, but hopefully it'll be able to go again, because it's giving people a platform to maybe make it to the NFL, which is what's needed for players who maybe didn't go to college or was playing in the AAF or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So hopefully it can continue and people like PJ Walker can get a chance in the NFL.
I must say, the one rule that I really liked in the XFL, just quickly touching on it before we move on, was after a touchdown, there's no point after try. You either have to throw for 1, 2, or 3, depending on where you start. You can pick however many want to points, many points, but there's no kicking after a touchdown, which I thought
would absolutely flourish in that league.
Yeah. no Blankenship though, who we really like. That would be unfortunate. So, but yeah, Kai, you were looking at the next game as well, which was Baltimore Ravens at home to the Tennessee Titans. Titans won that in overtime, 30 points to 24. Slightly more exciting than the Carolina Detroit game, would you say?
Just a touch, yeah. I would say there was maybe a little bit more to talk about in that one. I actually had some sort of meaning as well. The Lions-Panthers game kind of felt like a dead rubber. I know that's weird to say 6 weeks before the end of the season, but neither of the teams are really going to push for anything.
No.
Based on their records in the division. The Lions looked as if they were going to start well, but kind of fell away. But the one thing I would say about this game before I go on to talk about it was I don't actually think the Titans were that good for 3 of the 4 quarters.
I agree
in this game. I think it looked like the Ravens were probably going to not really get out of second gear and still win it. I don't think it was a vintage Tannehill or Derrick Henry performance until the 4th quarter. But I'll come on to that. Start with the Ravens. Don't think they play very well against tough opposition. You've obviously seen it against the Steelers, and then obviously now against the Titans as well. In these last 6 starts, Lamar Jackson's not broke 100 for his passer rating, which is a bit of a worrying sign for a quarterback. Now I know obviously he's not seen as a pass first quarterback. I know if that's even a thing. It's probably not a good sign for the Ravens. I think they could do with him maybe starting to find his feet in terms of passing. The question is, who does he pass to? Well, it would appear that Des Bryant is who he was passing to this week. With the second most receptions behind Mark Andrews, obviously, but it's nice to see Des Bryant back for a wee bit. I think he could be quite a valuable option for the Ravens, because it doesn't look like Hollywood Brown wants to do anything.
Nope, he was swiftly dropped from my fantasy team a couple of weeks ago because he'd done absolutely nothing.
I mean, he had 3 targets on Sunday night, and he didn't haul any of them in.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a reflection on him or whether it's just a reflection on the system in Baltimore, because as I've said before, they're quite a run-heavy team, but I think he needs to maybe start looking to bring himself to the forefront of the receivers. J.K. Dobbins had a good game, I thought. I know obviously 70 yards and a touchdown. It's a good return in terms of what managing the game. I think they did well to get him involved. Obviously not well enough. I know Mikey was quite excited because he thought Patrick Ricard had finally managed to get a touchdown to put him up there on the number 1 running back in ESPN, but it was swiftly pulled back. But to move on to the Titans, as I say, don't think they were very good through 3 quarters, and then I don't know if it was a case of them starting to turn the style on a wee bit, or whether it was the Ravens switched off and kind of tried to see the game out in the 4th quarter. But 89 of Derrick Henry's 133 yards came in the 4th quarter and overtime.
Yeah, well, I think to answer your question, it's more to do with the fact that Tennessee turned it on because Ryan Tannehill has now got 5 game-winning drives this season.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to absolutely love just teasing people with the fact that they might lose, and then he kind of drags them back into it towards the end.
Yeah.
But if you're ever gonna let somebody get you back into a game, Derrick Henry's the guy you want to get the ball, because he just seems to he finds space that isn't really there, but he also creates space for himself by just running into folk. I think the Ravens will probably be very disappointed they threw this one away, because I would say they threw it away. I think it was very much theirs to lose going into the last quarter, and they let the Titans back into it. The Titans had to win that game. From the perspective of, I don't know if other people saw it, I know obviously we spoke about it, was what the Titans did at the start of the game when they had a wee team huddle right in the middle of the field on top of the Ravens logo, and then I can't remember who it was, but then proceeded
Jim Harbaugh, he wanted all the smoke, man. He wanted it.
He was right up in amongst it, right in their faces, and he was getting quite a bit of back chat from one of the Titans players.
Malcolm Butler and AJ
Was
Brown.
it Malcolm Butler? I think he would have looked pretty. The Titans would have looked pretty silly if they'd lost that game after going on like that. But if you're a Ravens fan, no, I'm not saying be worried. Right, they're still a very good franchise. They're a very good team. Got a lot of good options, but I don't think you would be as happy with the way the season's gone as you probably anticipate.
Well, if the season ended just now, Kai, they're not getting in the playoffs.
Well, exactly. They're 3rd in that division behind the Cleveland Browns.
After Lamar last season, you're thinking of nothing else than a Super Bowl appearance. Maybe not a Super Bowl, but you're thinking we're getting to where the AFC runs through us. You're maybe not thinking that the Steelers come through the way they did this season. You know the Chiefs are going to be up there, Titans as well, and they're just, there's no other way to put it. They're struggling massively just now, and it obviously doesn't help that their game tonight, this is obviously recorded on Thanksgiving Thursday, their game tonight against the Steelers has been postponed until Sunday because I think the whole running back room's tested positive or been in close contact. So it's I wouldn't say it's panic stations for the Ravens, because they can still turn it around. I think last season at the midway point they were actually not doing too well, and they won every game in the rest of the regular season. So they have that capability, but yeah, it's not panic stations, but it's slightly worrying to see what's going on with them.
Yeah, I think the Ravens have fined a staff member for breaching kind of COVID protocols, because I think he's been not wearing a mask and been hanging about places he shouldn't have been, and they believe that's where the spreads come from, because I think there's nearly half a dozen players and similar number of staff members as well who have been put certainly in the COVID list.
I spoke about this. I've got a friend, Ahan, who's a fan of the show, so I'm going to give him a shout out. He's a Steelers fan, and I was talking to him about the fact that this game has been rescheduled from Thursday to Sunday, and he's not happy about it. A lot of the Steelers players have came out and said that they're not happy about it. Juju and Chase Claypool have came out and Eric Ebron have said it's ridiculous because a lot of teams have just had to kind of next man up mentality. I think we kind of seen it with a bit of the Packers 49ers game, and
Yeah.
I think the Steelers are they feel a bit unjust that it's a primetime game on Thanksgiving that their fans are losing. I know there's no fans in the stadium, but it's a big game and it's been rescheduled just to a Sunday 6 o'clock slot. So do you think it was the right call to move it? I know that NFL's just trying to navigate through these difficult times, but do you think it was the right decision to postpone it, or do you think it should have been next men up for Baltimore?
I have to say, proud is the wrong word, but I'm very impressed with Roger Goodell, because it wasn't like the NFL, it was actually Roger Goodell himself who made the decision, because he has picked player/public safety over money, because that game that game, primetime Thursday night game on Thanksgiving, would have been. I know. Technically, you still get money either way. Like the deals are all made and stuff. But really, that's huge on the telly. But he's went no for player safety. I think this is slightly different than some of the other games, because some of the other games, the players they've all then done tests, and there's been a day or a couple of days that no one's been tested positive for the team. Whereas at the moment, the Ravens are still getting people who have tested positive, so it's still an active outbreak. It's not like it's been curtailed. That they still think it's there. So I think to delay it a couple of days just to find out, right, there's no more spreading about here, because what could happen here is the Ravens play, they spread it to the Steelers, and then the Steelers have to shut themselves down. So I think for the safety of the league, I think it was the right decision in my opinion.
The one thing I didn't mention about this game this week, and it was probably one of the points that obviously in our chat that flagged up, was when AJ Brown caught the ball on about the 10-yard line, and everyone thought, that's it, play's blown up, that's it. And then he turned into some sort of like superhuman and dragged about 3 guys with him.
That was impressive.
Ran 10 yards with a defender on his back. But I was looking at I found the photo of him and DK Metcalf together, and to have the two of them on the same team is scary. Imagine you come up against the two of them. Like there is not a hope that you're stopping them. The size of them.
Yep. Anything else to bring up on that game? I don't think so. I think we can move on. I think I've made the executive decision for the PHFL podcast that delay of the game was the right decision for player safety.
I'll agree. I'll say nothing on it, but I also agree. Yeah. Tough decision to make. I agree.
The next game, Mikey, you were having a look at it. It was the battle of the running backs that Adam Gase really likes, as Frank Gore was up against Kalen Ballage, the Jets versus the Chargers. I'm not going to spoil the predictions for this game, but somebody predicted it wrong, and the Chargers ended up winning the game 34 points to 28. Mikey, what do you have to say about this game, apart from the fact that Justin Herbert, I think, breaking the record for the number of games that a rookie's passed for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns or something like that?
I'll keep this one short because we spoke about Herbert previously on today's podcast, and we kind of ran that Baltimore one over talking about the Steelers game this week. So actually, I know I said last week I thought the Jets were going to win this game because I'm not sold on the Chargers, but the Jets did run them close. It was a 1-score game in the end. That one thing I can't stop thinking about, and obviously Joe Flacco's going to be thinking about it, is after the Jets team turned the ball over and got the ball back to Joe Flacco, he threw a pick six on his own 10-yard line. It was just a ridiculous mistake to make, and that's obviously cost him the game. But I'll just brush through my point. Justin Herbert's, he's putting up Andrew Luck rookie numbers. Like, there's no other way. Him and Joe Burrow were both doing it. The thing is, Herbert is now going to continue to do it for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks. Seems to be a lock for Rookie of the Year. There's no doubt about it. Unless, I know I've said before, there's politics in the league, so the quarterback usually does win it. The other one, Jets. Any Jets fans? I know that your brother Adam's a Giants fan, so he will enjoy hearing this.
Yes.
They've obviously officially been eliminated from playoff contention, the first team this season. So no final playoff push for Frank Gore. And the last I spoke about this to Kai in our group chat, and I just want to ask you as well, Adam. Do you think Keenan Allen is a top 5 wide receiver in the league? This week he had 19 targets for 16 receptions, which was his career best, 145 yards and a score. So, do you think he's a top 5 wide receiver in the league?
He's very close. If he's not in there, you've got players like, I still think like Julio Jones, is up there. Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, but certainly I think Allen's up there.
A lock for top 10?
Definitely in the top 10, yeah. But he's very close to being up there. Obviously, I think it was last season he had a bit more of a down year, but certainly he had a really good year a couple of years ago, and this year again, I think he's shown just how good he is.
Well, this is what I asked Kai. Do you rank Thielen over Keenan Allen?
Whoa, that's a good question. I think they're very close. I probably would rather have Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well is, yes, you had no disrespect to Philip Rivers, but you had an aging quarterback with Keenan Allen, and Keenan Allen's still young, and I don't even think he's hit his prime yet. And this partnership with, I love the trio. The trio, as a Green Bay fan, you've got Rodgers with Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, and for the Chargers, they must be so excited that they've got Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, who is phenomenal.
You don't mean Kalen Balazs, all
right. Austin Eckler, and then Keenan Allen as well with Mike Williams. The Chargers, I know I've said I'm not sold on Anthony Lynn, but the Chargers have so much to be excited about for their future. There's good offensive line. They've got Bosa as well. They've got players on the defensive side that have been out for the season. I would go as far to say that I think the Chargers could be a playoff team come next season.
You've got Hunter Henry at tight end, and I really like Hunter Henry. I think he could be like a Kelsey type tight end.
Massively underrated. So there's, on both sides of the ball, there's so much to like about this Chargers team. I'm not sold on Anthony Lynn, but if he finishes with a respectable record this season, would not be surprised if Herbert carries him to a playoff spot next season.
Yep, I think I totally agree with you.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Mikey, see how you always talk about, obviously you're a Green Bay fan, but you always say you really like the Cardinals and you like Kyler Murray and stuff like that. I feel like that's the way I feel about the Chargers, is that as much as I'm an Eagles fan, I'll always kind of have a soft spot for the Chargers. Obviously, I really like Justin Herbert, but they're just a really good team to watch, I think. And like you say, for seasons to come, I think they could be a very good team.
Yep, totally agree.
I wouldn't go as far to say as they are a few pieces. I think they maybe need some more protection on the offensive line. I think they maybe someone to help Bosa as well, but they are 2-3 pieces away from being a genuine Super Bowl contending team with the kind of the hype around all their young players. I honestly wouldn't be surprised, especially moving to SoFi Stadium now as well. When fans start to come in, it's a really, really good time to be a Chargers fan.
Yeah. One team who I'm not sure it is great to be a fan of them at the moment, even though they won this week, is the Denver Broncos, because they've got the Chiefs, the Chargers, who we think is going to improve, the Raiders, who are doing really well in that division. That's a tough division for those Denver Broncos, but they did win this week against the Miami Dolphins, 20 points to 13. Mikey, you were looking at this game as well for us. What's your thoughts on that game? Obviously, Tua, probably the big point that Tua was dropped halfway through the game.
Yep. We thought it was injury related at the start, but Brian Flores came out after the game and said it was performance related, which might come as a bit of a shock, but we've spoke about this in different scenarios in previous podcasts. When Alex Smith came back, we almost wanted to see him get hit so that you know that he's ready for it. I think Tua needed this loss. Everyone was expecting him to win this game. I think we all predicted him to win. I think this is really, and especially after Tua said that he thought it would be a lot harder. This game has definitely kept him grounded, and it's not a massive loss for the Dolphins franchise at the moment. So I know they wanted to continue their momentum and maybe go for a deep playoff push, but I think this was needed for Tua, because I know they've got a tough schedule coming up, I believe, but and they obviously play the Bills again, and they're looking for this playoff wild card spot. But this was a massive game for Tua. I think he needed to learn from the mistakes that he made. Fitzpatrick couldn't find his kind of usual Fitzmagic towards the end. I know he threw an interception on a late drive when they were only down by 7, but the Broncos D were excellent this game. This kind of felt like I'm not saying that they're a playoff or a Super Bowl contending team, but this felt like the kind of Von Miller style Broncos D of old in this game. They contained what's been a really, really good Dolphins offense just of late. So I'm not really sold on the Broncos. I think they're kind of, especially in that tough division, because as I've been very high praise about the Chargers, and I really like the Raiders this season, and the Chiefs are going to be the Chiefs for years to come. So they're in a tough division, but a big win for them to keep the fans happy. But I think they're just a very middle of the road team just now.
I have 2 points quickly to make. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw for more passing yards and more completions in the last 10 minutes of the game than Tua did in the first 50 minutes of the game. And for my wonderful Claire, who may be listening or may not be, sorry when you asked for advice on whether you should sit Melvin Gordon in fantasy this week. He did end up getting 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. Thankfully, it didn't affect your game. You'd have lost anyway. But
who to?
Someone, I think his name's Mikey. I don't know who he is. He can't be that good. But yeah. Sorry about that. I feel bad.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins will be kind of glad to get to out of that one and just kind of not dent his confidence. And I'm not saying it will have dented his confidence, but I think, like you say, he probably needed to be brought back down to earth a wee bit. And he needed something to kind of keep him level-headed, because, like you say, he goes out and says he thinks it would be harder, and then he goes and loses. It looks a bit silly on him, so probably a good call to take him out and not force anything too much more and make his performance much worse. I think the Dolphins will be glad to get Myles Gaskin back at some point as well. I think he was activated off IR this week. Don't think he's in line to play this week. I think they're looking probably more towards next weekend before they get him back in, but you never know. But I think when he's back in, Tua kind of starts firing the way he was firing last week. I think the Dolphins have still got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah,
and I think there's still a good chance they make a push for the playoffs. But like you say, they've got a tough schedule to come. So
as you were saying, you've got Gaskin coming back for the Dolphins to help improve that run game. 2 run games that are really good are the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys. And Kai, you were looking at that game, the battle of Cook versus Elliott. In the end, it was Ezekiel Elliott and his Dallas Cowboys that won the game 31 points to 28. Let's try. I know this is an unusual thing for Kai, but a nice brief discussion on this game.
This was probably game of the week.
I know, but I think though it was a really good game, we can keep our points succinct.
Yeah, okay. I'm also...
That's Adam's producer saying that we've got time restraints and you need to hurry it up, Ken.
Someone in Adam's here. No, as I say, I think this was potentially game of the week in terms of how exciting it was to watch. It was pretty back and forward.
I agree.
I don't think going into the game people would have expected Dallas to even have run the Vikings that close.
Excuse me, speak for yourself.
Well, as an Eagles fan, I hoped going into the game that they wouldn't run them close. But obviously they came out of it, and with the win, it seemed to turn into like a fourth quarter shootout. 28 of the 31 points. 28 of the total points came in the last quarter, as opposed to 31 from the 3 other quarters. So it got quite exciting. Obviously, we mentioned Adam Thielen. He had a pretty good day for the Vikings, going for 8 receptions, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson as well with 86 yards and a touchdown. Having the 2 of them must be great. I know we didn't rate Kirk Cousins that high. Well, I didn't rate Kirk Cousins that highly in the quarterback rankings. But it makes his life easy when you've got guys like that to throw the ball to.
Had a passer rating of 140.
He had a ridiculous day. 314 yards, 22 completions, 3 touchdowns. He had a very good day.
He can do this though. That's the problem with Kirk Cousins.
He has it in his locker,
but he can do it. He can put up Patrick Mahomes numbers, just not on the consistent level of Patrick Mahomes. That's the only problem with Kirk Cousins.
And if this game was played 4 hours later, he wouldn't have been very good because it would have been in prime time.
No, it would have been in prime time.
Exactly. That would have been
obviously, as you say, it was the battle of the running backs. Dalvin Cook, 115 yards, touchdown on the ground. They also had 5 receptions for 45 yards through the air. And then Zeke has finally broke his drought and had a 100-plus yard game. and he obviously got himself a receiving touchdown, and was still outshone by Tony Pollard's 42-yard rush for a touchdown, which made Ezekiel Elliott look weak.
Good old Tony P.
But yeah, as much as it pains me to say it, I thought the Cowboys looked very good. Nice to see. Well, it's not nice, but for a Cowboys fan, it would have been nice to see Andy Dalton back, steady the ship a wee bit. He put in a good performance as well, to be fair to him. 200 and a bit yards, 3 touchdowns. Obviously through an interception, but it didn't make a difference. The last thing I will say on this game, and then we can move on, and it's the only stat I actually have this week, but it's quite an it's quite an amusing one. Andy Dalton's 2-yard pass to Dalton Schultz was the first touchdown in NFL history where the passer's last name was the exact match of the receiver's first name.
Oh, well, there you go. That is an interesting
Most
stat. Most
random stat ever, but there you go. Andy Dalton to Dalton
Jesus.
Schultz.
My God.
First time it's ever happened in the NFL, but I thought that was quite amusing.
Yeah, I suppose when you think about it, there's not that many names that are, first and last names, especially in American football.
Is there not a wide receiver called Roethlisberger Jones? No, something like that. I'm going to call my kid Roethlisberger and have him catch a touchdown from Big Ben.
Or a quarterback just coming through who's...
If he's still playing in 22 years' time.
If you can have a child, name it Roethlisberger and get it to the NFL and Big Ben's still playing, I'll be impressed.
But yeah, just quickly, as I say, just before we move on to that game, I think in our QB rankings, that's why I had Dalton as high as I did, kind of in the mid-20s, because I think he's a really solid QB, and it's just shown you, I think, when you've got solid quarterback play there for the Cowboys, just like you had with Dak at the start of the season, when you've got a solid QB, that team's actually quite good, and I think they could make a push for that weak NFC East. Sorry, Kyle. Sorry, Kai and the
Kyle.
Eagles fans. I was mixing Kai and Eagles together.
I don't even think it's like a question of whether they'll make a push. I think they have more of a chance of winning it now than the Eagles do. Looking at schedules.
Totally agree with
you.
The Eagles won't win for 4 weeks.
Wins and a tie. Eagles are on 3 wins and a tie, and the rest of the division's on 3 wins. This has just went from, oh man, it's just someone please win it because I can't be bothered with it, to this is now, in a way, the most exciting league in the most exciting division in the NFL. I know I'm all in. I'm all in this division now. I'm really liking the way it's shaping up massively.
Well, 2 teams that I'm all in on. Didn't like this, yeah. The Green Bay Packers at the Indianapolis Colts.
The Adam Bowl.
The Adam Bowl, exactly. And to be fair, I still haven't written too much about it because as a Packers fan, I don't really want to talk about it too much. Indianapolis Colts won 34 points to 31 after overtime. I don't really want to talk about it. The Packers were well ahead going into the second half, and then it wasn't Aaron Rodgers' fault, but basically Aaron Rodgers had to just sit and watch the whole second half as the Colts had a 14-play drive, a 10-play drive, an 8-play drive, and just came back into the game. In the second half and overtime, the stats are as follows. The Packers scored 3 points from a total of 161 yards and had 11 minutes of possession. And the Colts scored 20 points on 220 yards and 21 minutes of possession. So they had double the possession in the second half. It was a really great performance in the first half from Green Bay, but the second half was all about the Colts. And this Colts win meant that the 2020 season now joins only the 2015 season as the only seasons in the NFL history in which a team has overcome a deficit of at least 13 points to win in each of the first 11 weeks of the season.
Someone's done it every week.
Every week this season, someone's overcome a deficit of at least 13 points, and the only time that's happened before is 2015.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you know how long the stretch went in 2015?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm sure if...
Well, that's not good enough, Adam. Not good enough.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm only just copying the stat that Adam Schefter tweeted, that's all. So
Frank Reich coached the hell out of this game. That second half was just genius time management, clock management. looking at the full landscape of the game, the Colts were definitely worth their win, and obviously big Rodrigo Blankenship with the dub, with the walk-off field goal to win it.
Yeah.
In the heart for you, wasn't it, Mikey?
I mean, I'll put him in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. I'm not even kidding.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The guy's an actual machine.
I'll be honest. I'm just jumping forward to our predictions here. I predicted the Colts to win, and the reason for that is that the Green Bay Packers are too easily bullied, in my opinion. If you play against a decent defensive line, I think they're able to get through the Packers' offensive line and put pressure on you. And the Indianapolis Colts' offensive line's really good as well, and we just don't put enough pressure on the quarterback. I think, see, when really in the trenches, that's what they like to call the defensive and offensive lines. In there, I think the Packers can get bullied, and I think that's what happens. See, when we play a really good team, I think the Packers struggle. We'll easily beat, in my opinion, I know we didn't last week against the Jaguars, but the bad teams, I think we can easily beat them with our flair. But I think when it comes down to the real tough stuff, we struggle.
You'll agree with this, Adam. Obviously, in the off season, we were crying out for a wide receiver in the draft, and we didn't take one, and that was the biggest talking point for the Packers fans. But when we play lesser teams and we beat them, the likes of Lazard and even Tonyan to an extent and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, they'll go off, and everyone will think, "Oh, see, we didn't need another wide receiver." But then when we come to these crunch time games where you need that out and out wide receiver too, we're struggling like that. There's no other doubt about it, and those are the games. Those games are the reason why we needed a second wide receiver in the draft to partner Devontae Adams, because you could bring in anyone who could probably have any NFL wide receiver who would maybe have a decent day against lesser teams, but once you get into these big games with the likes of the Colts and other teams that will probably play in the run-in, you're going to struggle when you've only got Devontae Adams and then to a lesser extent wide receivers.
Yeah,
say like especially against someone like the Colts, like when you play a very good defense, you can't rely on one receiver to do all your work. You need to have quite a reliable wide receiver too. And I think I don't know how you guys would have seen it, but I kind of felt quite sorry for Valdes-Scantling.
You mean Marquez Fumble-Scantling? Is that what you mean?
Obviously, he was the one that gave up the fumble that resulted in the field goal in overtime that won the game for the Colts. But the one thing I did notice just from watching this game, kind of small note, and I've just gone to try and find the exact number. There seemed to be a heck of a lot of penalties, all in the same kind of plays. I think it was towards the end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I thought it was really harsh for the refereeing crew. A lot of them were on Indianapolis, and there were a lot of holding calls. And see that, and they weren't really holds. And at that stage of the game, I feel you've got to let them go. In my opinion,
they ended up with 8 penalties for 116 yards.
Yeah, I felt it was quite harsh.
I think you've just kind of got to, like you say, especially at that point in the game, just
if it's blatant, yeah.
Caution.
But a lot of them weren't blatant. No. Just a quick shout out before we move on to Sunday Night Football. Jonathan Taylor, the one we could decide to bench you. Thanks for going for 90 yards, 4 receptions, 24 yards to the air. On 22 attempts, especially after we'd been told that he wasn't going to feature as the running back and they were going to give most of the carries to Nyheim Hines. So thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I not that it changed anything, but I relied on it come the Dynasty League and put Nyheim Hines in, and he had a stinker.
Yeah. So that takes us on to Sunday Night Football, where the Kansas City Chiefs played against the Las Vegas Raiders. And what I can only imagine would have been an amazing game if the fans were there, but obviously not happening. Kansas City ended up getting some revenge after earlier on in the season. It was 35 points to 31. A really close game. My one stat for this game is that the Kansas City defense has really improved since about the second half of last season. But so far this year, excluding the Raiders, the Kansas City defense is conceding about 17 points a game, but against Las Vegas, they're conceding 35 points a game. So I think that kind of shows you that Las Vegas is actually quite good.
Maybe it's just like kryptonite for the Chiefs. It's
I
playing
am.
against the Raiders.
I'm loving the Raiders this season. I don't know what it is. I've never been a big fan of them in the past, but the way that we've spoke about it in the past is that kind of old-fashioned punch-mouth kind of football. It's just, it's a breath of fresh air in kind of the modern current league. I'd love to see them make the playoffs, especially the kind of first year in Las Vegas. I love that we spoke about it before. I love the fact that people are calling their stadium the Death Star. Just yeah, this is just again as similar to the Chargers. There seems to be a bit of a feel good factor. I know they lost this week. There seems to be a feel good factor with the Raiders at the moment. Probably unlucky that they're in the Chiefs division for the next 10 years with Mahomes in charge, but I'd like to see them make the playoffs this season for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a strong chance they will as well.
I was going to say, I don't know what it is about them, but I just can't quite seem to take to them. At the end of the day, like you say, it's just personal opinion, but there's just something about them I don't quite like, and it might well be that they are quite an old school team.
I like the old fashioned football, properly just run, and then throw it deep. I think it's amazing.
I don't find them that exciting to watch, and I think that's 90% of the reason why I started watching NFL was because I found it exciting to watch. Obviously, over time you start to appreciate how good teams can be by just grinding out games, and I think that's probably what the Raiders can be good at times, is just finding a way to win. Obviously the Chiefs were just too good for them on Sunday night.
I must say, I think if we get to the playoffs, I think Andy Reid will be happy to play any other team in the AFC. I think he'd fancy his chances against the Ravens, against the Titans, against the Colts, against the Bills. I really don't think he'd want to play the Raiders, because I think this Raiders team matches up quite well against the Chiefs, and I think there's a chance if you got to the playoffs, the Raiders
one-off game.
Yeah, the Raiders could easily do it.
The one thing I like from this is that this seems to be the kind of rivalry for the next couple of seasons in this division. I know I said the Chargers probably could make a big playoff run in the next coming years, but you think that the Chiefs and the Raiders are going to go toe to toe against each other and really battle it out, because these games are, as we said, kind of punch mouth, in your face kind of football. And when you've got such an explosive offense like the Chiefs and just that no nonsense D from the Raiders, it makes for very entertaining football to watch.
Yeah, it was good to see as well that the Chiefs weren't hugely reliant on Mahomes. I know he passed for 350 yards nearly, but in terms of touchdowns, Clyde Edwards-Helaire got a couple and Bell got one. I think it was good to see Edwards-Helaire get those rushing touchdowns, because he'd done a lot of rushing for not a lot of touchdowns so far this season. But yeah, it's good for him there. And again, obviously Jacobs on the Las Vegas side getting a touchdown as well. I just think these are two good teams, and I think they'll both get to the playoffs and do fairly well.
The receiving yards leaders for this season, DeAndre Hopkins is on 912, wide receiver. Stephon Diggs, 906, wide receiver. Travis Kelce in third place with 896 yards, tight end.
Yeah, unbelievable.
The guy is a different breed, and especially with Kittle being out this season, like the full attention on the tight ends is on Travis Kelce. In tight end rankings, he's first in catches, first in receiving yards, first in touchdowns, first in catches per game, first in yards per game. The guy is just an absolute monster.
Yeah, he's a cheat code at tight end for fantasy.
I think we said that last week as well, was we were talking about like the drop off from him in fantasy
to the rest.
I think that's him to the rest of the tight ends. It's about 80, 90 odd points, I think, something silly.
Yeah.
He's always good, like every week for at least 20 points at tight end.
Yeah.
Which when you can have that is crazy. The one thing I know we always like it is he threw a pass for 4 yards the other night.
Yes.
We always like an outfield player. That doesn't really make sense. They're all outfield players. Now I'm imagining someone standing on the goalpost trying to like block kicks and that. No, we always like a non-QB throwing a pass. So there's another one for this week, was Travis Kelce throwing one.
Yeah, but I thought it was a very good game, enjoyable game, and a nice Sunday night game. And another game that actually was surprisingly good for primetime telly was the LA Rams at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where the Rams won 27 points to 24. And my stat is that Brady in primetime this year is now 1-3.
It's not very good
No.
on prime time telly.
What's going on? Both the rushing games are non-existent here. 37 yards from the Rams and 42 yards from the Buccaneers. But the passing games, Goff threw the ball 51 times. Brady threw the ball 48 times. There was nearly 100 pass attempts in this game for nearly 500 yards in total.
Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp combined for nearly 300 yards receiving.
Yeah. And did I put Robert Woods on my bench? Yes, I did.
Yes.
Typically. And on the other side of the ball, the kind of threesome of Brown, Godwin, and Evans, had most of the targets and most of the receptions for Brady. Are they trying to force the ball to Antonio Brown, or is he just better than Godwin and Evans?
I think they probably give him the ball, or it looks like Tom Brady looks to be trying to give him the ball more. But I think part of that is probably because over the past couple of weeks since he's come in, it's become very apparent that he's a reliable guy to throw the ball to. I'm not saying Chris Godwin and Mike Evans aren't, but he's maybe just got that wee bit extra at times where if he's in tight coverage or he seems to be able to break out of it a lot better, and he can. It's obviously like a reliability thing, isn't it? See, if you're a quarterback and you can throw the ball to the guy, and 9 times out of 10 he's probably gonna come down with it. I think you're more inclined to give him the ball. But it's not in any way saying that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans haven't done anything to warrant it. The two of them got the touchdowns. So
it's AB's reputation preceding him. Like he's 9 times out of 10 he's going to be open, even if it's just for a short pass. He's going to be open. And on the other side, I loved this game. I thought it was brilliant. And the yards after catch from Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, I think they lead. Since the start of 2019, they both lead the league first and second in yards after catch. But I think one of the main talking points, and we touched on him last week, is Jalen Ramsey. He's put himself into the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. The guy has just been against the Seahawks and the Bucks, who are high-scoring offenses. He's been nothing short of phenomenal. And another point that the commentators kept talking about in this game is that Aaron Donald was relatively quiet in terms of actually contacting the quarterback, pressures, tackles for loss, anything like that, or sacks. But it's the fact that they're triple teaming him. That teams are genuinely having to triple team Aaron Donald to keep him contained. And that's just going to leave other gaps open. And that's why one of the big factors that the Rams won this game. Just a really good, kind of similar to what I felt like it was almost like a Raider-style performance. The Rams were very punch-mouth in this game. I know they weren't running the ball a lot, but they were making a lot of big plays on D. And just again, I think I spoke about it in the group chat, that Tom Brady, when he loses, does not go and shake a quarterback's hand.
He's a bit sour, I think.
He's done it against Nick Foles. The traditional go to the middle of the field and shake hands. He walked straight through the tunnel, and Nick Foles was standing there with a Bears personnel or whoever it was, and he was kind of looking about and saying, like, where's Tom Brady? I want to shake his hand. Happened out this time with Jared Goff. Tom Brady went straight down the tunnel. The only losses where he's went up and shook someone's hand has been Drew Brees this season. But I don't know. I don't like to see that. I think you should win or lose. You should be out there and shaking the. I don't know if he's got bad blood with Nick Foles, obviously with the Super Bowl, but he's got every reason to shake Jared Goff's hand after Monday night, and I just don't like to see things like that.
No, certainly not.
I think Jared Goff had a very good game on Monday night, and I know, again, we keep coming back to this quarterback rankings thing, but it's quite a good thing to reference to see how poor we predicted some of them. I don't think me personally, I wasn't very high on Jared Goff because I don't think he's the most razzle-dazzle quarterback in the world. But
razzle-dazzle, I've not heard that phrase for a while.
There we go. There's a podcast. I've got excited saying that now. A podcast new. Razzle-dazzle. He's not the most razzle-dazzle quarterback in the world, but it's become very apparent, especially over the past couple of weeks, that this offense and him complement each other very well. Like you've said, Mikey, Sean McVay complements Jared Goff and vice versa really well. Like the Rams are very good within their own right, I think, and I think Jared Goff is very good at just working this offense. He knows who he can get the ball to to get it moving. He knows who he can get the ball to get in the touchdowns. I mean, the Rams have a tough run in. They play the 49ers, they play the Cardinals, the Patriots, the Jets. So there's 2 wee layoff games, and then they finish with the Seahawks and the Cardinals again. The fact they need to play the Cardinals twice in the last 5 weeks of the season probably is quite a big one. But with the momentum that the Rams have got and the way they've been playing recently, I don't think you can rule them out.
No. I had to go back to I had Jared Goff at number 11 in the quarterback rankings. I in a higher level to Kirk Cousins, like when he's playing bad, he's bad. We've seen that against the Dolphins, but when he's playing well, again, he could potentially be MVP caliber if he keeps up a level of consistency. But the Rams are now the number 2 seed in the NFC, and they'll be gunning for that number 1 seed, like 100%. Their D can carry them through. They've got weapons on offense. Like I said at the start of the season that I was all in the Rams, but not to this extent. I honestly don't see why they can't make another Super Bowl run this year. There's no doubt about it in my mind.
Yeah, well, these are definitely 2 playoff teams, so they might meet each other again. You never know.
Yep.
That's all the games.
Sorry. I was going to say the other interesting thing that came from it was the Rams play. I can't remember his first name. Fuller. Can't remember his first name. Obviously had 2 interceptions. His first 2 interceptions as a rookie. Was selected 199th in the draft, the same position as Tom Brady 20 years later.
Oh, that's a wee bit of poetry there, isn't there?
There's a wee bit of poetry going on. So the exact same position and in his the exact same position in the draft 20 years later, and in their first game against each other, he picks them off twice.
Yeah.
But there you go.
There's just one thing I want to ask, not in relation to this game, just as the NFL as a whole. Obviously, at the start of the season, Russ was the kind of favourite for MVP. Like, who are you guys picking right now if the season was to end for MVP?
Put simply, I have no idea. I don't think there's been one standout performer.
Has Patrick Mahomes flown under the radar this season? Like, to me, he is now like MVP. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that he's the MVP.
You say flown under the radar, like. I think he's just doing what everyone knows he's more than capable of doing. You always look for someone in an MVP season to go and do something magical that you don't expect of them, I think. Or you expect them to be like, I don't know, I think the bar is so high with Patrick Mahomes because you know how good he is that actually what he's doing this season is unbelievable, but it's not out with the realms of possibility for him. But I think you're right in the sense of if you were to say he was the MVP, I don't think you can argue. I don't think you would.
I'm just looking at the statistics here. I'm looking at the statistics here, and I'm thinking to myself, is this actually right? Apparently, he's thrown 261 passes, 27 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions.
That sounds about right.
And I think either one or both of those interceptions came in that first game against the Raiders that they lost. Or maybe what did he throw one against the Jets potentially? But the guy is, as Kai said, he's playing to his normal levels, but his normal levels have won him an MVP, a Super Bowl, and a Super Bowl MVP. So I don't see right now if the season was to end, he's my MVP for the time being. I don't think it can go to anyone else at the moment.
I mean, I'm not going to even put that in as a outlandish claim because I mean that's just a normal claim, isn't it?
No, yeah, that's a Patrick Mahomes claim, which is very normal because of how
a bog standard statement to make.
Yeah, so far this season, 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions so far this season.
That was quite a surprising question you asked there, Mikey. It took me by surprise, but I think, I think
Mahomes is probably the favourite at the moment. Yeah. If he keeps up that, he's thrown for 3,000 yards, 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. If he puts it up to, we've got just under half the season to go. If he goes to 5,000 yards, even 40 touchdowns, and keeps the interceptions around 5, I don't see why not. Yeah. That's all the games. Perfect. Mikey, are we doing a little normal playoff predictions?
We have. I'll rifle through it quickly, just to go through it as we normally do. So I'll do the NFC this time first this week.
Oh, again, changing it up,
The exact same 7 teams. There's obviously just been changes in the division standings. So The Saints are now the number 1 seed. They replaced the Green Bay Packers, so they get a first round bye. So you've got the number 7 Arizona Cardinals at the number 2 LA Rams.
Rams for me.
I'm taking the Rams there. So, Kai, your opinion is moot. Then we've got the number 6 Bucks, Tom Brady, at number 3 Green Bay Packers against Aaron Rodgers at cold Lambeau Field.
I changed my mind after I saw us get bullied by the Colts, and I think the Bucks might bully us.
I'm going to stick to the Packers, just like I did in the predictions this week. I'm taking them again. So the Packers. And then the number 5 Seahawks at the Philadelphia Eagles.
Is there a question?
Even asked the question.
Number 5 ranked Seahawks go through. So
I think, if you're any of those teams that aren't winning their division, like, you want to be getting the number 5 seed, because you play one of those NFC East teams, and whoever plays them, you've won, essentially.
Do people want to try and mathematically win games in order to get that number 5 seed in the NFC?
So do they make sure they don't win the division? Do they make sure they drop?
Tank for Eagles.
I think it would be. There will be teams.
Tank for Cowboys.
There will be teams looking to get the 5th seed instead of maybe the 3rd seed, because the 3rd seed playing against the 6th, is going to be a harder game than your 5th seed playing against the 4th. Definitely, there might be some match fixing going on with some teams trying to lose in the last day.
So we've got a matchup that I don't think we've spoke about yet. The number 5 Seahawks at the New Orleans Saints. Good matchup.
Ooh, that's a good game.
It's a good game, and I'm going to go with the Saints.
Yeah, I think by that point, if Drew Brees is back, I think you go Saints.
Right, so the number 1 Saints go through. And then we've got the number 3 Packers in LA against the Rams.
Rams.
I'd pick Packers if we got there.
See, I'm in LA as well. If it was in Green Bay, I'd take the Packers, but I'm taking the Rams. So, NFC Championship match, the Los Angeles Rams at the New Orleans Saints.
I think Sean McVay's brain would win that, and we'll go the Rams.
Yeah, I think the Rams.
I'm also going Rams. So we now have a new Super Bowl contender with the LA Rams. So the AFC, this week, the Titans and the Cleveland Browns are in. The Baltimore Ravens and the Miami Dolphins are out. So the Steelers, again, as always this season, have a first round bye. You've got the number 7 Raiders at the number 2 Chiefs, Adam.
This is where I think the Raiders might do it.
This is
the only game I can see. I can see the Chiefs losing.
I can see it going either way. Like you say, Adam, I could see it going either way. I just think, at the moment, I think you can't write off the Chiefs.
No, I can understand that.
I think they probably just have too much for the Raiders on their day. But, like you say, it could go either way.
So the Chiefs progress. Number 6, Cleveland Browns at the Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo Bills.
God. I've just realised the Browns are in the playoff picture.
Yeah.
The Bills.
The Bills for me, please.
And a very interesting game, I think. The number 5 Titans at the Colts. Whoa. I think Derrick Henry is going to run all over that D. Oh, my voice went there, Sean. I'll appreciate that. I'm going to take the Titans.
I would go Colts. I just think the defense of the Colts is too good. I don't think they do what the Ravens did this week and let the Titans bully them.
I agree. I think the Titans' defense is just not good enough in that game, and defense wins championships, isn't it? Is that not what they say? So I'd go with the Colts.
The top 4 seeds progress, whereas in the NFC it was the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and the 5th as the Eagles fell out. So,
unsurprisingly,
Colts at Steelers.
Oh,
some of these are hard this week. By the way.
The AFC is the hardest one. I think the NFC, you've got your kind of 7 teams that are going to make it. Maybe the Eagles, maybe for someone else in that division, but that looks pretty set in stone. Whereas the AFC, you've got people chopping and changing. You've got matchups that are so hard to predict. So at Steelers.
I think probably the Steelers.
I'm taking the Steelers.
I think the Steelers, especially with them having had a week off as well to rest up.
I was going to say that.
And you've got a good matchup, the Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chiefs.
Yeah. I would love to see the Bills get there because I do like them, and I think Josh Allen has done very well. But yeah,
Chiefs at Heinz Field against the Steelers.
Chiefs for me.
I'm also taking the Chiefs there.
It doesn't matter what I say. Good, because I can cop out and just not say anything.
So the number 2 seed from the AFC faces the number 2 seed from the NFC. Chiefs versus Rams. Who you got? I'm going to go out there. I'm taking the Rams. I'm all in the Rams this year.
I tell you something, by the way. See if that's the Super Bowl. I think it would be a cracker.
I'm taking the Rams. I think they've learned from their previous Super Bowl mistake. They're not just going to put up 3 points this time. I'm taking the Rams. I'm sorry, Chiefs.
I'll leave Kai the deciding vote because I think Jared Goff will crumble, throw 3 interceptions, and the Chiefs will win the game by about 20 points.
I think what could be the downfall of the Rams is that they don't have a solid running back one. They have 3 running backs in a kind of committee, and they don't really have one that stands out and could go and take a game to someone, so I'm going Chiefs.
So Chiefs.
I would rather see the Rams win it, but I think the Chiefs would.
So for the last 3 weeks, we've had Chiefs winning the Super Bowl against the Rams, the Steelers, and the Chiefs Steelers, that doesn't count. The Rams, I think the Seahawks, and the Packers. So Chiefs won our last 3. And then one of the first ones we did was the Seahawks versus the Steelers, and the Seahawks win. Oh, how times can change.
On record, I don't want the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl this year.
Nor do I, but I think there's a strong chance they will.
Yep.
So are we moving on to predictions now, Mikey, are we?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, great. That's a 2-minute warning then.
Can we get this over quite quickly?
Yeah, no, I'd like to savour this if that's all right.
A shocking week for anybody not named Adam.
Yeah, well, I knew 1 week eventually I'd come back. Are you want to take those 5 bonus points off me yet?
Please. I'm going to say you are now right in the thick of it, Adam.
Yeah.
Right in the thick of it.
Well, let's start with Thursday night, because typically I'm really good at predicting Thursday nights. So, Seattle beat Arizona.
Yes, Adam, you won.
Oh, did I? Oh, did you two get the right?
We had the Cardinals.
Oh, right, okay, just checking. Let's check the next game. Washington beat Cincinnati.
Adam, you won.
Did any of you get that?
No, Adam.
No.
Nope.
Let's miss it the next game where I got it wrong.
Yeah.
The Saints beat the Falcons.
Me and Kai both had the Saints.
Yeah.
Finally.
I hope we all said Pittsburgh would beat Jacksonville.
Clean sweep.
Yeah. Houston beat New England.
Yes, Adam, you won again.
And the two of you didn't. Oh, well. Right.
No, Adam.
Let's not talk about this one because I don't think I got this one, though. Cleveland beat Philadelphia.
Yes, Mikey, you had the Browns. Just you.
Carolina beat Detroit.
I know Kai says that his second favourite team in the NFL is the Chargers, but looking at these predictions, it's 100% the Lions. There's no doubt about it.
Every week he picks the Lions.
Big fat 0. Yes,
I don't know why I took the Lions this week.
You had the Lions on the first time Matthew Stafford has ever had an offensive 0 points for his team.
I'm not picking them again.
Yeah, me and Adam had the Panthers and PJ Walker.
Tennessee beat Baltimore.
Adam, again, with the win.
Yes. Well, see, I tell you, I'm good at these sometimes. 1 week out of 10. The Chargers beat the Jets.
I had the Jets.
For some reason.
I had to stick with it. I really didn't want to pick them, but I had to stick with it because I said that in last week's podcast.
I actually forgot you'd done that, and I was expecting clean sweep Chargers there. Sorry, that took me by surprise.
Adam and Kai had the Chargers.
Denver beat Miami.
Clean sweep, but the wrong sweep. We all had the Dolphins.
What about Dallas at Minnesota? Dallas won.
Yes, Adam.
Did I pick the Cowboys?
I'm not liking this side of you, Adam.
Yeah, right, come on, I don't normally get to do
This is the side of Adam that you are, Mikey.
I've had 8 weeks of being totally destroyed by you, so give me the 1 week. Green Bay lost to Indianapolis.
You both... I've actually mistakenly wrote that Adam and the Colts had the Colts, when really it was Adam and Kai had the Colts. I'm pretty sure the Colts probably had the Colts as well in this. I took the Packers because when I was looking at your predictions, I was the last to put mine in. I seen that the Packers were sitting there with nobody on them, and I thought, I'm wearing a Green Bay jersey just now. I had to stick with them. So, yes, Adam and Kai and the Colts had the Colts on that one.
What about Kansas City, who beat the Raiders?
Clean sweep for all of us for the Chiefs.
And the Rams beat the Buccaneers.
My dearly beloved Los Angeles Rams, I had predicted them. You two had predicted Tom Brady and the Bucs.
Good effort. So, what are the scores on the doors?
For the week, the Colts have 1 point out of 1.
Well done to the Colts for
The
picking
Colts.
themselves. Well done.
Kai in 3rd place with 5 out of 14.
That is pathetic.
That is less than half. Even I don't get less than half.
That's nearly less than a third.
Me just 1 above you with 6 out of 14. And Adam with 10 out of 14.
Hey,
Good
no
grief.
swearing, Kai.
I said good grief.
Good,
So
that's
this
fine.
means that in 4th place the Colts have 1 out of 129.
That's good.
They're now going to be in our rankings for the future now that I made that mistake. Adam in 3rd place with 75.
Getting there.
Kai in 2nd place on 77.
Oh, well,
Oh
I've pulled
my.
that back, haven't I?
And me, just like I am in ESPN, just like I am in Sleeper, just like I am in the predictions, 81 out of 129, 4 ahead as it stands in 1st place. But it's
Just
getting
point out
close.
that in ESPN and in Sleeper, someone else also has the same record as you.
But are they the number 1 ranked team?
Is there a way? Is there a way on Discord I'm just able to just mute Mikey? Is that gonna?
You can. I'm pretty sure you can remove people.
Oh, can I just
Chat.
chuck him out
Yeah.
the chat? Oh, that's where.
Yeah.
Finish this podcast the way we did the last week's podcast. Haters are going to hate. That's all I'm going to say.
Right. So quickly, let's touch on Thursday night games. We know that Baltimore and Pittsburgh aren't going to play because COVID and all that. But there are still 2 other games that are happening tonight, which someone said that that the NFL have tried their best to discourage social gatherings by putting these 2 games on the television on Thanksgiving, and I think I probably agree with them. So you've got the 3-7 Texans against the 4-6 Lions. Do we even have to
Who
ask
have you
Kai?
got for that?
I am taking the Texans here because I think they win because I think the Lions are honking, and I bet you this is the week the Lions win.
Well, I'm going to take the Texans as well.
I'm also going to take the Texans. I think the Lions are missing Kenny Golladay, DeAndre Swift.
However, the Texans are missing Randall Cobb and they're missing what's his name? Other wide receiver that's not Will Fuller.
Kiki Kuti.
No, he's in. It's Will Fuller and Kiki Kuti.
Brandon Cooks?
Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb are both out. So is David Johnson.
Are the Texans missing Deshaun Watson?
No.
I
So
think
then
I
The
will take
Texans
the
will win.
Texans. I will take the Texans, yeah.
And the other game is an NFC East matchup. The Dallas Cowboys 3-7 at home to the Washington Football Team, who are 3-7. What
This
do you
is in
think?
Dallas.
It's in Dallas, yes, as it always is on Thanksgiving.
And Andy Dalton is fit. I'm going to take the Cowboys.
Kai's
Kai, this is
grimacing.
Yeah, you should see Kai's face here on the screen. He's really not happy having to
I
pick
take
one
a
of these.
tie.
I mean, technically you
You can
can
take a tie if
predict
you
a
want.
tie.
And see if it is a tie, I'll give you 10 points.
I would happily
Right.
give him 10 bonus points, yeah.
I'll take a tie because I don't want to side for either of these teams.
Right,
Right,
we
okay.
have a first tie. There we go.
Yeah, so that's an automatic L for Kai already. This is really tough because I like the Washington Football Team. I like Antonio Gibson. He's my boy. But I think the Cowboys are quite good, especially with Andy Dalton. So
Sorry, I'm going to change my decision. I'll take the Cowboys.
all right,
I think
okay.
they'll win.
Well, I'm taking the Cowboys as well. So we've got 2 sweeps. We've got all of us taking the Texans and all of us taking the Cowboys. We all support those Texas teams then on Thanksgiving Day. So, and thankfully, just quickly before we end, the game that was cancelled tonight because of COVID was the very late game for us here in the UK. There was talks that they might push some of these games further back because they're on at 12:30 and 4:30 over on the East Coast in America, but they haven't moved them, so that means they're actually on at tea time and then at 9:30 here, so we can actually watch the games without staying up till stupid o'clock,
Love it.
which is much appreciated. Thank you, NFL, for doing that for your British fans. I don't think we've got anything else to say, do we? I think that's us for this week. And
Happy Thanksgiving.
yes,
Aye. Happy Thanksgiving to the American folk.
Yes,
Not that we
happy-
celebrate it, but-
happy Turkey Day to all you people over there.
Oh, aye,
Can't
and I've totally forgot what I was going to say there. Never mind. Let's finish.
I can't, all I'm saying is I can't wait to see Zeke biting into a big old turkey leg tonight.
Is that a private video, Mikey, or is that going to be public?
Yeah, he does it on Cameo.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I think we're going to leave that right there. I don't want to know what other videos Mikey's requesting from NFL players. Thank you for joining us, you two.
See ya.
Thank you.
And we'll see you later. Bye.
Roll
credits.